Wake up. It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 171. Getting kids to sleep through the night. Crying myself to sleep. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist, sleep specialist, and your host for this episode of the podcast. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast family, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can through social media, Dr. Chris Winter, Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter, Twitter, X, Dr. Chris Winter, Bluesky, Threads. We have a YouTube page where we post the video content of all of our shows, including this one. You can certainly get in touch with the show through that portal. We also have a web page for the podcast. And if you go to the webpage sleepunplugged.com, there is a button on the home page for our sponsor for this week and last week's podcast, Dagsmian Pajamas and Sleepwear. And if you click on that button, there is a special offer for the sleepwear just for you that they are excited to extend to our listeners. Last week, I was wearing their Nat Cool line. For this episode, I thought I would wear the Nat Well line. And as we talked about it before, I am this close to pulling the button, pushing the button and ordering some Nat Recovery sleepwear. If I could just be home long enough to get a few things done, that would be great. Where have we been since the last talk? I want to give a huge shout out to um, Strong New York. This is Kenny Santucci's project where he gets fitness people, health people, product innovators, coaches, trainers from all over the place, and they converge on New York City for a big conference. This was their ninth year doing the conference. I put a bunch of it on social media. I was asked to do a talk with Chris Moore, who is a unbelievable nutritionist, works for Men's Health, has done work at the FBI and the White House and every magazine you can imagine. So he and I shared the stage and talked about sleep and nutrition. And actually, Maeve, the producer of the show, was the moderator of the talk. And she had this great idea. Let's pit it as a little bit of a debate. Which is more important, a afternoon nap or a afternoon snack to pick you up? Which should you do if you have limited time? Get up early, sacrifice sleep, go to the gym, or should you skip the gym and get that extra sleep? So it was fun to have this kind of playful back and forth between which is more important, sleep and nutrition. And of course, the real answer is they are both equally important, as is mental well-being and exercise. I sort of think of those as the four pillars. So really want to give a big thanks to Kenny Santucci, Strong New York. Check them out. They're a really great organization, and look forward to hopefully attending the 10th anniversary of Strong New York. It is well worth it. I was talking to a lot of people who were attending there and said, hey, what do you think? You bought a ticket. Did you get your money's worth? And they're like, oh yeah, they got to take classes from Gabby Reese and Laird Hamilton and all these great influencers, great deals on products. You get to sample everything. It's worth it. Put it on your calendar next year to go to New York and check out Strong New York. It is, I just want to give another just quick mention and shout out to Dasmian. And again, that's Dagsmejan sleepwear. They've got the Nat Cool, which is an amazingly comfortable and cool line of sleepwear. The Nat Well, which I'm wearing right now. They've got sleepwear that can keep you warm. They have sleepwear for sensitive skin. As I mentioned before, they are the performance provider for sleepwear for the Swiss national hockey team. Really well worth it. There's, holidays are coming up. We are heading into October. I can't believe it. This is the time to get holiday shopping done. They will definitely be featured on our Black Friday sleep product episode later in November. So give them a check out. It is the last week of September. So that means we have to do the top 10 threats to your sleep. I promised you that I would get you an amazing guest ranker. Last week, we had as our special guest risk assessor Kathy Goldstein from the University of Michigan. Now we've got from University of Pittsburgh, Joanna Fong. Saria Wangsi, and she is amazing. She is constantly out there advocating for you. I am a big fan of hers because I do a lot of telehealth, and we have a couple days when you hear this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast on Monday, this Congress has 24 hours. The deadline is September 30th for them to decide if they're going to extend telehealth benefits to Medicare patients. And I think everybody should be paying attention to this because as Medicare goes, so too will other insurances go. I do a lot of telehealth. I think it has revolutionized the medical space. I think it is, I've said before, the one positive thing that really came out of the initial Trump presidency from a doctor's perspective. There's a lot of negatives. The one positive was he really embraced telehealth. And now this Congress is set to say, no, we're not going to pay for it except in exceptional circumstances. I think it is a massive mistake. It is a way to get health care to people who may not have access. And once again, the people who can pay for it will pay for it. So if you have Medicare and you're like, I want to see Chris, then I'll just pay for it if Medicare won't pay for it. No big deal. It's not that expensive. But for people who money's tight, and money's tight for a lot of people, people losing jobs, that telehealth link to healthcare is critical. So I would encourage you to talk to your congressman or senator and say, listen, I want to see telehealth services extended going forward. And the reason I mentioned it is because Joanna is a massive advocate for these types of things. She also leads the Start School Later efforts with the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. She works to make sleep a priority alongside physical activity and nutrition within schools and within the American Academy of Neurology, where she just finished updating the traumatic brain injury statement for veterans. She added early diagnosis and treatment of sleep as a core priority. On the performance side, she's partnered with Gatorade to help highlight sleep and performance and hormone balance and continues to have a consultant role with the Pittsburgh Steelers while trying to expand that conversation. I feel you, doctor. It is tough to get some professional sports organizations, particularly football teams, to really embrace that. So, without further ado, here is Dr. Fong Isaria Wangxi's top 10 list. And believe me, it's awesome. Number one, moving up a spot, chronic sleep deprivation. I think that should be number one. So did she. Number two, this is not only new to this week, it's new to the list ever. Sleep policy failures, in particular, daylight saving time, standard time. So we've talked about save standard time a lot, as well as school start times. Number three, new to the list, never been on the list before, sleep in sports, as well as safety sensitive jobs. I think that's fantastic. We do a whole podcast on that. Number four, new to the list, never been on the list before, youth sleep deprivation and academic pressure. You know, I'm going to talk a lot about my book, The Rested Child, today. In that book, we talk a lot about the topic today, helping your child get to sleep, and the other big threat to a kid's sleep, which I think is school. School, particularly for older kids, is very difficult. It is hard to reconcile getting the right amount of sleep with academic pressure. I'm so glad that she recognized that. Number five, mental health and sleep. I think that's new to the list too. Number six, socioeconomic barriers. Number seven, untreated sleep disorders. This is a really obvious one that I think absolutely belongs on the list when you start looking at how many people do we think have narcolepsy or out there untreated? How many people do we think have sleep apnea out there undiagnosed? These are massive numbers, so I'm glad she's calling attention to that. Number eight, moving down three spots, technology and blue light. You know, there's been some recent research. I was kind of back and forth with Michael Gradsar about a lot of information he's putting out there about, hey, blue light and blue light blocking glasses are really not doing all that much. I don't think they're harmful. I think his point is, yeah, but I think they're overselling what they can do for people and they're expensive, etc. So that's a really interesting thing that she's still calling attention to light. Light matters, but maybe, you know, the blue light blocking glasses are not as effective as research sort of indicated that they were before. And again, you know, as we think about the Tylenol, acetaminophen debate, science can be wrong, but science evolves. We take the best guess we can and then we move forward from it. And we want to see science reproducible. We want to see other scientists getting the same thing. So this is a great example of, we've talked a lot about blue light on here, and it probably matters, but how much and to what end, I think is really coming into question. Number nine, new stigma and misperceptions. I love that. That's what this podcast is all about. And finally, number 10, again, new to the list, poor education among healthcare providers. Ding, 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 outstanding. We'll talk about a little bit about that today. And in the K-12 space. Like your kids are going there and getting, sex ed and health ed and maybe dietary education and how to, type and skills on a computer, but they're not learning about sleep. And that's really a problem. So really want to thank her for that special guest assessment. We're going to skip comments and corrections, criticisms, but I do want to call out somebody who contacted the podcast. Her name is TD, as in touchdown. I'll just give her initials. She said, "Hey, I tried to see if any of this was listed on your Instagram before asking. I'm reading your book. I'm doing the 3 week sleep tracker, et cetera, et cetera. And my child is generally sleeping about 9 to 10 hours a night, closer to 10, but is regularly awake in the middle of the night for long chunks of time. 45 minutes to 2 hours. These usually coincide with her getting up to go to the bathroom. She typically falls asleep 15 to 20 minutes after lights out at 7:15 and wakes up somewhere around 7. If I didn't put a tracker on, I would not have known this is happening." Okay, so we're going to get into this. I'm glad you wrote into the podcast. I think this is a great place to start. So we're going to talk about how to get your kid to sleep through the night. And if you are not like TD and don't have my book, The Rested Child, I would encourage you to get it because we talk a lot about it. And what we're really going after in this podcast. Oh, before we get going, Crying Myself to Sleep from the title, Jonathan Richman and Modern Lovers, one of my favorite groups. This guy had an entire career and then hung it up before his albums really ever came out. Drummer was eventually a drummer for the Cars. I think his guitarist was eventually a guitarist for the, or bassist. No, his guitarist, I think, was eventually guitarist for Talking Heads. So this very early, kind of early 80s group. And Crying Myself to Sleep, I believe, was off of his album Jonathan Sings, but I'm not sure if it was off of his initial album or a re-release. I'll have to look into that. We're putting this together quickly because I got to catch a flight in a few hours to go work with an NBA team. If you're not familiar with Jonathan Richman, Roadrunner, fantastic song. Pablo Picasso, amazing song, and actually covered by David Bowie in one of his later albums, and his cover of it is just incredible. And then my personal favorite growing up was Dancing at the Lesbian Bar. Um, just great, great pre-punk music, and we'll put Crying Myself to Sleep. If I can find it on Spotify, onto the Spotify Music Playlist Volume 4. If we can't find it, it's a wild card. I get to pick whatever Jonathan Richman song I want, and I'll put it on there. So find that playlist, upload it to your Spotify. Enjoy. So buy my book, Sleep Rested Child, Why Your Sleep's Broke, or Rested Child, Why Your Tired, Wired, 8-year-old child has a sleep disorder and how to help. That's going to help you a lot with what we're talking about today. But what we're really, really talking about is sleep training. And I hear this a lot, and it's like everything else in our culture, we have to polarize it. You are either going to talk about an individual who is crying it out, sometimes abbreviated CIO. This is what we would call like an unmodified extinction. Put your baby in there, they don't like being in the crib, they start crying, you leave them. And, people get really fired up when they talk about crying it out. And I would too. I mean, if you've had children, I have three, they're grown now. It's terrible to listen to a baby cry. I believe genetically, neurologically, we are programmed to hear a baby's cry and react to it in a very specific way that is not positive. So the other side is the Ferber side, who was a neurologist. Check and console, which we would consider to be sort of a graduated extinction. So I would kind of put that in the middle. And then maybe at the far other end is screw it, you can just sleep in bed with me. I don't want to get into bed sharing. I think that's a whole podcast. I can't remember if I've done one on bed sharing or not. Here's what I will say about it. This starts to get into sort of parental kinds of decisions. I think the American Academy of Pediatricians say, please don't share a bed with your baby until it's about 1 year old, because it needs to be able to protect itself from you in terms of suffocation. I'm a heavy sleeper. I could easily roll over into a child. That would not take a lot of stretch of imagination to do it. It would not need alcohol or something like that involved. So I understand attachment parenting, feeling, I mean, it's nothing better than snuggling with a little baby at night. And when my wife's out of town, I always let the dogs sleep with me because I love them kind of snuggled in with me. And those dogs can protect themselves. If I roll over under them, they can bark, they can move, they can, get out from under me. They're very strong little creatures, even though they're, 20 pounds. So I think until your baby can do that, that far in, we just have the baby sleep with us. I've talked to parents who the breast is out and the baby can nurse whenever they want to throughout the night. It's just, everybody's just doing their thing in a big bed. I think you have to be very careful with that. I have had personal experience with patients losing children that way. Not often. I'm not making it out to be something that's happening on a weekly or even yearly basis, but it does happen and it is tragic. And nobody who I've ever had that experience has said, well, it's terrible, it's a tragedy, but we wouldn't do it any other way. Can you hear that with like skydivers? Things go badly, and you're like, well, that's what he loved to do. She loved that cliff jumping, and it just, didn't work out for her. So I think we have to really follow smart guidelines. You can have your bassinet with your baby right next to your bed, just maybe not in bed with you, I think is important. So now we're looking at sort of that gentler Ferber, and then the cried out. There's other things where you're like in the bedroom with your kid, and then the next day you move the chair a few inches closer to the door, and the next day a few inches further away. And so you're slowly moving away from the child being there. And there's all kinds of stuff like that. I think they call it the camping out method or something like that. So, to me, I just want to say, I don't think that a lot of people, I've never really run into them, and I certainly don't, advocate for the full 100% full bore crying it out method. I think that you can find some research that shows that there can be some risk involved in that, with babies kind of having higher levels of cortisol. In general, it's hard to do these kinds of studies. And again, I want to be very cautious talking about these types of things, particularly in the climate where we are right now, where we're talking about um, uh, relationships and difficult science. So I think the crying it out is just emotionally hard on everyone involved. Um, the cortisol asynchrony that people talk about, I can't remember where that paper was, where they were talking about that stress signaling could have bad outcomes sort of down the line, and not really ideal for infants with medical issues who are under that 4 to 6 month age. I mean, you're just going to have to suffer through a baby that's trying to get its circadian rhythm in order during that time. I think that's just kind of part of the deal. So when we think about it, I like to kind of be somewhat in the middle. I'm okay with a child crying a little bit, or making little sounds. So to me, it all starts with a schedule. And this goes back to TD. TD saying, hey, number one, my kid's making it through the night, but they seem to be awake for a period of time. I wasn't aware of it except for my child having a tracker. Then don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with your child waking up. In fact, we wake up. That is not pathological. Humans wake up during the night. So if your child's waking up, looking around the room, playing with a doll for a minute, evaluating their hand. I don't know what it's fine. If they're not waking you up, do not worry about it. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Now, if you're feeling like, well, they're awake for 2 hours during the night, you can make the bedtime a little bit later. You're saying that she sleeps around 9 to 10 hours through the night, closer to 10. It sounds like she's not. It sounds like she's closer to 9 if you subtract out the average hour she's awake during the night. So you have a decision, TD. You can either have your child go to bed 1 hour later and keep the wake up time where it is, or if there's napping going on during the day, you could subtract out an hour of that napping time, or you could say, she's not hurting anybody. We're going to keep it exactly the way it is, which is probably what I would do. And that's where we get into efficiency. And that matters not only with TD's child, it also matters with sleep training. Because what we are trying to do is match the opportunity your child has to sleep with their need for sleep. So again, I'm okay with a little bit of crying out in terms of it's time. We've decided, okay, we're going to have two naps during the day with our child, and we're going to try to put the kid down at 8 o'clock. And so every time you put them down at 8, and they're okay, here we go. The baby's been fed, we've played with it in the gentle bedroom, sit with it a little bit, calm it down. And then I like to put the baby to bed awake. I don't think, nursing it, having it fall asleep on the breast, and then gently putting it down like it's a bomb, I don't think counts because you are trying to encourage a child to learn how to go to sleep by itself. Right. Okay. So quiet time, baby's awake, seems relaxed, eyes are getting heavy. Set the baby down in the crib at 7, 8 o'clock is our bedtime, and we good night and we move our way out of the door. Lights out, it's dark in there. And I would typically just kind of sit outside the door and wait because my anticipation was probably going to struggle. We had kids that were better than others or whatever. So if you have a kid that's not doing particularly well, then you sit there for a little bit. And if it's quiet, hey, it worked. You got the baby monitor in there. You go off and do some stuff, put some groceries away, get some emails written. You did it. Congratulations. If the child doesn't go down, then I think this is where record keeping really matters and being sort of diligent. Okay, I'm looking over the last few weeks of putting my kid down at 8 o'clock, and they never really fell asleep before 9. So what would happen would be you put him down, and 5 minutes later, you hear little sounds and little grunts, and you feel it as a parent. It's coming. They're not wailing at this point. They're just like it's like my little dog when she wants to play. She kind of makes these little sounds, like I know what that means. And as a parent what those sounds mean coming from your kid's bedroom. So you hear them, and sometimes they happen and then they disappear and the kid sleeps. Other times it escalates, it's escalating, and now they're starting to be pretty upset. This is the time that I would go in. And you check the baby, check the diaper, make sure they haven't spit up a little bit, and you would just hold them. Nothing exciting. I would try not to feed them again. I would keep them in the dark. When they calm down, you do it again. And you might do it over and over. And I also think it's okay that in terms of that crying, you can set yourself a little timer that when the sounds from the child get to be at a certain point, I'm going to give them 30 seconds and then I'm going to walk in and get them. And then maybe can you push it out to a minute? Again, you got to use your judgment here, but you can try to extend it out there and not have 30 minutes of just absolute wailing. I mean, I've had some unfortunate plane flights lately where I'm genuinely athletically impressed by the child's ability to keep it up. Like, what could be so bad that, I mean, screaming to the point where I'm scared the child's actually going to pass out and there's going to be an announcement. Does anybody hear a doctor on this plane? Like, it's that level of screaming. So to me, you go in and you deal with the child and you come back out. Now, you're keeping records of all this stuff because as we're getting information here from TD's child is not sleeping close to 10 hours, they're sleeping close to 9. So we make decisions, right? It's like Ross Rayburn, that yoga instructor for Peloton. I love that little saying he says, I make suggestions, you make decisions. So my suggestion would be, what's it look like over the first 2 weeks of your 8 o'clock to whatever training? Well, the best we've done is 30 minutes. It seems to be an average of closer to an hour. Okay, maybe 9 o'clock might be better. Or can you find somewhere during the day to subtract some sleep out? Because right now, your child doesn't really seem that motivated to want that sleep. So it's really just about matching. There's a great sleep log, and I've got pictures of them in the book that it's like a grid and you fill it in. Like there's a line for when you put the child down, but you don't start coloring in squares until they fall asleep. So it provides this very nice visual sort of pattern of what your kids are doing when they sleep and allows you to make decisions going forward because as soon as you get it figured out, parents, it's going to change because kids are in such a rapid period of neural development that their sleep needs are constantly changing. So I think that, to kind of put a bow on all this, This is really not that hard theoretically. It's about let's pick a schedule. Okay, we'll do a 1 hour nap at 10 a.m. We're going to do another hour nap at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. We're putting them down at 7 and we get going at 6. Okay, well, you called your shot. There you go. How is it working out for you after a week? Perfectly. Then you're done. Or, we really struggle to get them to go down for that second nap. And they often wake up in the middle of the night, don't want to go back to sleep. So these are the signs that your child is getting more opportunity than they need. That's where you want to look at the National Sleep Foundation's recommendation for sleep amounts by age of the child. Look at what a wide variety little kids have. So you have to be very careful to not base your kid's sleep on an average amount of sleep, but really specifically on the amount they need as an individual. Because some kids are just shorter sleepers than others. So as we drug them with melatonin and clonidine and all these, sleeping pills, what are we treating? A disorder? No, we're not treating a disorder. We're treating a child with a sleep need that does not meet your expectation or your desire as a parent. And that's the hardest part, I think, sometimes of these methods. So I think crying it out doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But let's face it, kids cry. Kids cry it out a lot. That kid on the airplane crying it out. Going through the grocery checkout line, your kid grabs a bunch of candy bars. You're like, no, we're not going to get candy bars this time. And they start crying. What are you going to do? Just buy them a candy bar? Oh, you're going to cry? Okay, well, I got to give you a candy bar because I got to watch out for your cortisol level. You don't want to be in the car seat? You're crying in the car seat? I had a kid who cried when we put him in the car seat. What are you supposed to do? I mean, I guess you could not drive them around, but you're not going to let them freely roam around the car because they cried. So there's always going to be things that we need to do to keep our kids healthy and safe that might involve a little crying. I think we can do it in a very compassionate, caring way that is not going to interrupt things down the line. And believe me, you're putting an investment in. I know it seems really tempting to just, I'll just get in bed with me and forget it, whatever. I got to get some sleep. We all pay a price. We're going to pay a price for that one, right? At some point, the child is not just going to look at you in the middle of the night and say, okay, I'm going to go get my bed now. You might be making that transition a little harder as time goes on. So, what do you think? How did you get your kids to sleep through the night? What was your method? What was your secret? Let us know. Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Blue Skies Threads. Follow us on the YouTube page. Like and subscribe to the podcast. Please check out my book, The Rested Child, if you're struggling with the sleep of your kids. And thanks again to Dasmian Sleepwear. Maybe that's what your baby needs is little mini sleepwear to keep them nice and comfortable throughout the night and their little sensitive skin. Or maybe that's what you need to treat yourself for having such a difficult time getting your little baby to sleep. So check them out, the little discount buttons on our webpage, and I'll try to post them on our socials. And thanks again to Strong New York. Until next week, sleep well.